and that if you're listening to this in the States or Canada or the UK, then you're probably eating more than 50% of your diet that is ultra processed. Federica, could you tell us a little bit about, I guess, what the latest science is telling us about that? Because I guess that's part of the challenge that we're then facing as James is helping us to understand how to achieve our goals nonetheless.
Yes, and Jonathan, I think a really big part of it is for people to be aware. So talking about these foods and talking about what they are is a step in the right direction, because as James said, if you know the kind of person you want to be, and it comes back to the big why, like, why are we doing this? Why do you want to have a healthier diet? Why do you want to feel better? We need to have also the right tools in our toolkit to be able to achieve those daily goals. And ultra processed foods and the science around them has shown us that, if you are somebody who wants to see themselves as being healthy and active, and your why is because you want to play with your grandchildren one day, ultra processed foods are not going to help you get there. So ultra processed food science is evolving very rapidly, and there's a big body of evidence coming out, specifically with association studies. So when we're looking at large cohort data and we're associating ultra processed food consumption with specific health outcomes. Now I think at one point there was a paper coming out every single week that was a huge analysis of hundreds of thousands of people that looked at, okay, the more ultra processed food you're consuming, the more likely you are to suffer with consequences such as type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular disease, heart disease, metabolic disease, mental health disorders. And what's important to say is that this body of evidence is really growing, and it's all pointing in one direction to associate these foods. And we're still looking to do more research to understand the mechanisms as to how this is happening. An ultra-processed food, there is a classification called the NOVA classification, which is like the gold standard for now, but I'm sure that will evolve too. And essentially, these are foods that are made industrially. So they are some, Tim Spector loves to call them edible food-like substances. They are these foods that are made in large factories, and there are a bunch of chemicals that are thrown together to look like food. So essentially, when you're looking at the back of pack and you're looking at an ingredients list, if you see lots of ingredients that you wouldn't possibly have in your own kitchen, and if the food that you're about to eat doesn't look anything like food, so an Oreo is a good example, right? An Oreo doesn't look like anything you could ever grow or kill. They are very likely to be ultra processed foods. And these ultra processed foods, I think it's almost impossible to imagine a world where there's not going to be any of them. But all we have to do is zoom out a little bit to our European neighbours and see that it is possible to live in a world where maybe 10 to 15% of our calories come from these foods, as opposed to, as you said, Jonathan, over 50%, and in some groups in the UK, up to 75%. So they're these food-like substances that have mounting data showing that they are not helpful for us. They are not good for our health, physical or mental.